This episode is brought to you by Iams Pet Food. When you choose Iams dry dog or cat food, you can see a difference in your pet with your own eyes. Healthy energy in 5 days, healthy digestion in 10 days, and healthy skin and coat in just 25 days. Satisfaction for you and them. Guaranteed or your money back. Feed Iams dry dog or cat food and see a visible difference. Visit iams.com/difference to learn more.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind a beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, it's Monday morning. It's grey, it's drizzly, so I'm in a very good mood. But at last, Kieran, we can talk about football for once. It's been off the menu for the last couple. I can't tell you how happy I was on Saturday afternoon when you managed to concede 2 goals in the last minute against Wolves, who were down at the bottom with Palace. I almost messaged you, Kieran, but I don't know why I blamed you for it happening. It's clearly, of all the people whose fault it was, you weren't one of them.
Yes, yeah, I did have a few words to say at the time, but I think I took it reasonably well, along the lines that performances and results don't always go hand in hand.
Yeah, I thought your Twitter X message is that a point gained or 2 points lost was one of the you're just asking for trouble. I think we started. You're very bright. That was very Brighton-y, which brings us to Spursy. If Spursy is a word for terrible, they were awful. I have to say I was really pleased because, as you know, Kieran, the last time we recorded, we had to do it early because we both had things to do. You had to go and see Tranmere play Grimsby, and I had to go to a function at which I met the manager, Ollie Glasner, and I couldn't be more happy that we won yesterday for his behalf because he was absolutely charming. He was very nice, but then you start to get worried in the same way that you go to someone's house and you meet a lovely old Labrador, and they say, "Yeah, he is lovely, but he's going to the vet on Monday, so fingers crossed, don't get too close to him." Because he was such a nice man. The idea of him losing his job was distressing me a little bit, but he's safe for a couple of weeks, I think, Kieran.
Yes, I think there's 1 or 2 other managers who are getting a little bit more attention at present in terms of the next to go, which is a terrible thing to do. I mean, I'm very lucky. I teach for the League Managers Association, and first of all you get to know people a wee bit as individuals, and then I'm from an academic background. I've seen all the research, I've seen all the outcomes of the research, and sacking the manager doesn't make things better. But what it does do, of course, is it takes the pressure off the owner, who doesn't like getting it in the neck. So the manager is simply used as a scapegoat to relieve fans saying rude things about the person in charge.
Yeah, it was David Moyes I felt sorry for yesterday. He would have sat himself down. He said, I'll watch my new club, Palace, play Tottenham. He'd have been whitening his trainers, ironing his tracksuit, and then, damn, that call won't be coming from Steve Parish yet. It's questions day, Kieran. We got some crackers, as always, and our first question comes from Matt Welpton. And Matt says, I've recently been looking at UEFA's new approach to financial regulation and noticed there seem to now be 2 requirements for clubs to comply with. One being similar to that of the Premier Profit and Sustainability, and the other akin to La Liga's squad cost limit regulations. Is compliance with one almost guaranteed to ensure compliance with the others, or are clubs going to have to keep both in check simultaneously? How does compliance with one differ from compliance with another? Nice juicy one to start with, Kieran.
Yes, I do feel slightly guilty, and I think as this show has resulted in people now going to the UEFA handbook, Companies House, and other places, which I think for us legacy fans would not historically have been our first port of call in terms of our love for our club. But it's a very valid question from Matt, and I think what we have seen is all of the focus has been on the capping rule, in which on a sliding 3-year basis, UEFA have said that the money which comes into the club through ticket sales, through broadcasting and commercial. And then, intriguingly, or I suspect intriguingly for me and not many other people, what you have to do is that you take the best figure of this year's player sales or the average of the last 2 years or 3 years, and you say, well, which of those figures looks best for the club? You add all of those numbers together, and then 70% of that can be spent on player wages. So I think the definition of a player wage will be an interesting one. Coaching wages and agents' fees, which have got thrown into the equation, and our very good friend amortization. So it's a change. Clubs are having to be careful in terms of how they organise things. The other issue is that under UEFA's old rules, and this is where Matt was absolutely right, that the equivalent of the PSR rules, under UEFA's rules, you were only allowed to lose €30 million over a rolling 3-year period compared to the 105 million as far as the Premier League was concerned. So the rules were actually much, much tougher. And also, in respect of UEFA, that if you've got an interest-free loan from an owner, it looks as if UEFA just say, well, that's not allowed. We're going to charge interest on the loan for PSR purposes, or for their PSR purposes. So under the changes, they've increased that €30 million to 60, but it's going to involve some pretty complicated calculations. And what I am concerned about is that this is all becoming incredibly bureaucratic, because if you think of the position that we now have as far as the new UEFA Swiss models are concerned, and I've got to be saying, I think that they have become quite exciting already, and I'm absolutely delighted that Villa are top of the league. I think that's I think if I was a Villa fan, I'd be absolutely beaming from ear to ear. So certainly credit to them for that. But you've now got 108 teams having to comply with the UEFA rules. That's an awful lot of paperwork to submit. That's an awful lot of paperwork to check as far as UEFA is concerned. And it is a sad indictment of the modern game, for want of a glib phrase, that we now have financial compliance taking up so much time. And this, of course, is in addition to, if you are a Spanish team, you've got to comply with the La Liga rules. And we'll get somebody from La Liga to come on. I know I've got their number to go through their rules. And, of course, if you're a Premier League club, you will also have to comply with the Premier League rules, which looks like it's broadly going to mirror the UEFA rules. But there's also talk about this anchoring coming in as well. So potentially you could have 4 different sets of rules if you finish 7th and you qualify for the Europa Conference on a Thursday night against Bulgaria's third best team. And you might be saying to yourself, if you're working in the office of a club who's having to do all of that paperwork, it's not really worth all the aggravation.
2 questions off the back of that, Kieran. Firstly, just to clarify, are you only subject to UEFA's rules if you're in a UEFA competition? In other words, last year Brighton would have been, and this year they won't be. And secondly, are you on a bung from Company's House?
I'm not on a bung from Company's House, but I suspect I would probably take a great deal more pride in this than anybody else on this conversation. I was invited to appear on their blog.
Oh my Lord! Well done.
Exactly.
So that's fantastic.
How many people have put that on their CV? Eh?
Oh no! Well, it's now become my ambition. I have to say, Kieran, I can't occupy the moral high ground here because, as you know, because you heard me, I was on Talk Sport yesterday before the Palace game, speaking live from the garden of the Parsons Arms. I say garden; it's not a garden, but you know what I mean. It's out the back.
Yes, I've been there.
And I got my customary free round of drinks from Bev, who runs the place, because she said, "You are going to mention the pub, aren't you?" I went, "Yeah." She said, "This one's on the house." So yeah, you're getting bungs from Company's House. I'm getting bungs from the Parsons Arms.
Yes.
What was the blog like? How was that? It sounds exciting.
Well, they just contacted me to say, we're really pleased because we seem to get so much more interest in what we do. And I don't think they get normally. They've not had fanboys before like me.
Fanboy, you're the poster boy, Kieran, for Company's House. Is what you are. Yes, I don't know where it is, but there should be a big picture of you. Where is it? Where's Company's
Swansea.
House?
Swansea.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah.
I was going to suggest I might go.
I'm not saying I have to wear a tag when I go to Wales these days, but yeah, it's getting a bit. And also in relation to the other question, which is the more significant one, I guess. If you are not in UEFA competition, you do not have to comply with UEFA rules.
Right. Okay.
So Palace and Brighton don't have to do it this season.
Right. Okay. Because I was wondering whether, technically we're all in UEFA, right? Every league is UEFA. But that's interesting. But still leaves 108 clubs having to comply with 2 sets of financial fair play conditions.
Yes, plus their domestic ones.
Yeah, and so Matt implies this question as well. So does one have priority over the other? Or would you just?
I think the rule where you can only spend 70% is the one which is tested first.
Right. Okay.
And if you fail that, they then sort of investigate. If you pass that, then they run you through the €60 million limit.
Right. Okay. Adam Dunlop has a really interesting question, Kieran. Ali tells me that if you learn the oboe, for example, you have to learn circular breathing. And in a way, Adam Dunlop's question is a case of circular breathing, because Adam says in terms of Premier League profitability and sustainability rules, what is the position with regard to fines levied if there are breaches? Can clubs use the fine as an allowable expense against a £105 million loss over 3 years? In other words, can you get yourself out of trouble in FFP by getting yourself into trouble with FFP, which is where the circular breathing comes in?
Yes, I think this is a very valid question, and actually it's one which I have received on a regular basis in recent weeks, especially from Nottingham Forest fans and some Manchester City fans as well, because there is one body of thought that the threshold of proof in respect of the accusations against Manchester City for mistreating money from the owner as sponsorship income, and also in respect of offshore payments, that they might be successful in that, but they might lose the case with regards to non-cooperation with the Premier League. And they lost the case in respect of UEFA, and they got I think it was a €20 million fine, which was reduced to 10 million. I've been through the Premier League handbook, and I have been in contact with the Premier League, and to be fair to them, they are investigating as well, but they've not got back to me just yet. My perception of this is that if you pay a fine, it's treated as any other expense as far as the club is concerned, so therefore it's not exempt for PSR purposes. But we will find out more details in due course. So if I get an update, I'll put it through in the next show where I can say that definitively. But I went through the handbook myself and PDF'd keywords, and nothing came up which it would appear to indicate any benefit. But never say never in the world of football, and it is such a sensitive topic at present, given that some clubs have been fined for a variety of misdemeanours, that I think we do need clarification on this.
Absolutely so. Well, from fines to points deductions, Kieran, our next question comes from Wayne Wardle, who I'm assuming is from Liverpool. It's a proper Scouse name, it sounds to me, Kieran, Wayne Wardle. Strong name. But Wayne says, thinking back to Everton's 10-point deduction for FFP rule breaches, I still can't get my head around this aspect. If the overspend mainly came in the form of interest payments and loans for the new stadium, how did this create an unfair sporting advantage? Or is it simply a case of it's irrelevant what the money was spent on, it's still an advantage, hence the points deduction?
Yes, I suspect, given that this...
Oh, is he all right?
He's having a stretch.
Oh, That sounded like
as he's got older, he grumbles a bit more.
Yeah, terrible. Don't we all, Kieran? Let's face it.
Yes, that is. Oh, yes,
That's the canine equivalent of going oof when you sit down or get up. Oh, it's just Finley going, oh dear. Oh, he sounded like my old friend Martin Treneman then as well. He just Anyway, he's from Phone Shop. That's the one thing. If I ever mention Martin Treneman, he'll go, yeah, from Phone Shop. Tell him I was in Phone Shop. Okay. And he was the dad in In-Betweeners. He mentions that a lot.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he was the dad in In-Betweeners, yeah. So you saw a lot of the back of his head.
I took the Baroness to the In-Betweeners for our second date.
Did you?
Yes. I took her to the In-Betweeners movie because I always found it absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
And she didn't. So yeah, how we've ever managed to get through to a very happily married relationship, given first event was Hartlepool away and second was the In-Betweeners movie, is something which is probably baffles social scientists and those people on those sort of romance programs. But yeah, we somehow got through it. She says, do you find that funny? Because I was just sniggering for 90 minutes, which isn't particularly endearing with somebody that you hardly know.
Can I suggest, Kieran, and this will only make sense to the 200 or so people who were at our last live gig in Balham a week or two ago, that if you'd answered the question we got, where did Kieran take the Baroness on the second date? If you'd actually said the In-Betweeners rather than the answer you gave, you might have been in less trouble than you were in for the
Yes.
weekend afterwards. So let's just bear that in mind. He went to the In-Betweeners for their second date, everybody. Anyway, Wayne's question, which is a good one, because does it matter if it's a sporting advantage or not? Is it just they just spent too much money than they were allowed to spend, or lost too much money than they were allowed to lose?
Well, I think it's a fantastic philosophical question. And once again, all we can do is to apologise to Wayne, because Everton's 10-point reduction was, of course, reduced, but he probably wrote this question shortly after. So this would have been sort of October 2023. So yeah, the waiting list is just down to 12 months. We'll have to come up with some vehicle for reducing that. We'll bang our heads together to see what we can do to reduce the waiting list. I think it's a very valid point, and to be fair, the interest issue has been excluded from the calculations which have gone into Everton's point deduction. However, there is a separate potential set of charges against Everton which relates specifically to the interest on the loans. And here I'm unequivocal. Everton have not been given any sporting advantage in terms of their ability to sign players, play wages, and generate points on the pitch through what is ultimately a very technical and pretty moot point as to the club borrowed money from the owner. The club said that that's gone into the construction of the new stadium, and as has the interest. And the Premier League have said, well, we've looked at the loan from the owner and it doesn't actually say that. So therefore, we think that interest should be charged. Or it was a different. It was probably a different loan. Everton have gained no sporting advantage whatsoever. I am all for punishing clubs if they breach rules. Whether the rules should be there in the first place is a separate issue, but ultimately the clubs agreed to the rules. If they breach the rules and it's clear that they have got a sporting advantage because they have been allowed to sign players, they have been able to sign players in terms of offering them better contracts, then there's a sporting benefit. There should be a sporting sanction. Here, there is nothing gained by Everton. The new stadium will not come on stream until 2025, and there's no sporting advantage. There's an advantage to the people of Merseyside because it's going to create new jobs. There's an advantage to the people that go to watch Everton because the facilities will be better. Goodison's a grand old stadium, but it is an old stadium, and certainly as an away fan, I can't sit down there because I'm 6'3" and the seats are too close together. So I don't understand the motivations of the Premier League here, unless they are taking a very sort of computer says no, the rules is the rules is the rules approach. But the fact that we've not heard anything with regards to A, whether the commission has been put together, B, when the commission dates are taking place, and of course C, what the ultimate outcome is, doesn't reflect particularly well on a system where I think the Premier League had rightly said our objective is that something happens in the season. It's dealt with in the season, which I applaud. I'm all for a quick resolution to events. So, Everton haven't gained a sporting advantage. If they are given any form of punishment, I hope it is a fiscal punishment at most. And in an ideal world, there should be no punishment whatsoever. Just told, sort out your paperwork a bit better in future.
It's going to be strange seeing Everton play at a brand new state-of-the-art stadium. I love the older stadium. It's interesting watching the highlights, the match today when they've got it's their last home match before Remembrance Day. So they had the last post and the reflaying on Saturday, and of course that'll be the last time that ever happens at Goodison Park. So I imagine there will be mixed feelings for a lot of the older Everton fans in particular. I hope they celebrate Goodison Park, because I actually prefer stadiums like that, to be honest, which is handy because I support a team that also has a shit stadium. Michael Halliday has a question which takes us to a country that has a lot of Price of Football fans, Kieran, and takes us to a country we both love to visit. Just saying. Just saying. Kieran,
Put it together. Let it be so.
I don't see why the good people of New Zealand should be prevented from watching us do a live show, Kieran. That's all I'm saying to any New Zealand entrepreneurs out there. But Michael Halliday says, in New Zealand, we're getting a new professional team, and the licence has been given to Bill Foley. His consortium, Black Knight, owns an NHL team, Vegas Golden Knights, a few second-tier US sports teams, a 33% stake in Lorient in France, and Bournemouth in the Premier League. I think Bournemouth fans would probably expect to be at the top of that list rather than the bottom.
I think they might, yes.
But Michael says, my question is, are we getting someone who's going to help keep a pro team in Auckland? And then adds in brackets, from a financial perspective, we've had two teams in the past, the Knights and the Kings, who both struggled to get the fan base and the revenue and fell over. I would love to have a team close by to support for the long term. Is that likely? I mean, it's not a good sign, Kieran, that already Michael's talking about two teams that couldn't survive financially. So why would this new one be any different?
Yes, and I think to a certain extent, Michael has answered his own question. I mean, Bill Foley has fiscally been good as far as Bournemouth are concerned, in the sense that the budget is more generous. Converting that into additional fans, and here I am going to go down the cliche for a country in which rugby is the sport. Trying to attract people, just as people have found when they've set up new, rugby, when we used to have the rugby league team in London, for example, and trying to expand a sport where many times the focus is on the international level of the game as opposed to the club, and I think that's where New Zealand's football lies. Will be challenging. Bill Foley he's a man in a hurry. If my observation of him, he's a man of senior years, and he wants to do things the Vegas way. So I think it could be quite spectacular. They will try to use a bit of showbiz to attract more interest. Ultimately, what do people want to see? They want to see some entertainment, and they want to see a winning team. Now, whether he can deliver that as well, which will keep the crowds, and whether you can do that on a long-term basis, because again, you look at things like the London Broncos and so on. It was initial novelty value, and then, I've seen it a few times. I'll go and do something else. So I can't be any more positive than that.
London still does have a rugby league team, Kieran, but by the skin of its teeth, I understand, because rugby league have changed some of their financial rules, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be viable to continue with a London rugby team, which is a shame, and it might be something we can look at in passing, give it a sideways glance. I suppose, Kieran, in a country like New Zealand, you've got similar problems to a country like Scotland. A smaller population, but a huge country. So travel expenses, for example, you imagine, unless the leagues are regional, travel expenses would be prohibitive, you'd guess, wouldn't they?
That's right. Well, not prohibitive, but certainly challenging. And what we have seen in Scotland is at least they've had the ability to recruit players from the European market. So in terms of the overall quality of the product, that has been beneficial. New Zealand will struggle to attract quality players from the South American and the European markets and the Asian markets because, going back to the geographical issue, that it's not a product which delivers significant money in terms of TV rights or sponsorship, and therefore you are reliant upon gate receipts as your major source. Players go out there to try to find themselves, to try to get a reputation. Perhaps they've been passed over as academy players in the European market, and whether you like it or not, Europe is where it's at in terms of the quality of the product. And many New Zealand football fans will follow Premier League or La Liga teams rather than following the domestic teams.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I'll do, Kieran. I won't say I'll do it, producer Guy will do it, but just for Michael's sake, we'll reach out to Bill Foley and to see if we can discuss with him his plans for New Zealand. Or we'll reach out to somebody from the New Zealand FA, because it'd be really interesting to get more insight on than perhaps than I can certainly offer. Hannah Roberts has our next question, and it's a path we've trodden before, Kieran. But I'm happy to ask this question again, because it's one of those things that anecdotally football fans can't get their head around, and I'm one of them. And Hannah says, what does it actually mean when a club signs a player on loan with an obligation to buy? I understand the words, of course, but I can't figure out what the benefits of doing this are. Welcome to my world, Hannah, where I understand the words, but the concept is confusing me. So as Hannah says, she can't figure out what the benefits of doing this are for either the selling club or the buying club. What difference does it make to the contracts and the accounts? Or is it just a cheeky way of delaying the payment for a year?
Well, I think, again, Hannah's, to a certain extent, answered her own question-ish. Now, the key words are obligation to buy. So that means that there has to be what we refer to as an obligating event. That will be embedded in the contract. And this actually relates to, I think most spectacularly, the Leeds United and was it Kevin Phillips Augustine deal?
Kevin Phillips Augustine would be a completely different player.
That's right. Yes, sorry. So what happened though? So people not familiar, Leeds United in 2020? It was COVID year. They signed a player in the January transfer window, and the deal was the player was coming on loan, and if Leeds United were promoted to the Premier League, then the deal crystallised, and there was a transfer fee to pay. And the player would also get a contract which was for 3 years at Premier League wages. Now, it turned out that it didn't work out on the pitch. I think the player played 43 minutes during his period, but Leeds United were promoted. And therefore, going back to the contract, the contract to buy the player only kicked in upon promotion. And that meant that Leeds had to pay £20 million to, I think it was RB Leipzig, and they had to go and pay the players' wages because both the counterparties. So things don't work out at times, and this was just one of those deals. And the reason why the case was so intriguing, I think, from a legal point of view, was that if people recall that during COVID, football went into hibernation for 3 months, and then we started playing football again I think it was in June and July. Now, contracts normally, and the season is normally deemed to finish by the 30th of June. But because the season was extended into July, Leeds United said, well, on the 30th of June, we were not promoted, so therefore the contract doesn't kick in. And what the selling club and the player said, we've got diktats coming from both FIFA and UEFA to say these are extenuating circumstances. And therefore, the season is now deemed to be when the final match has been played, which would mean that Leeds United by that stage were, of course, promoted and therefore had to pay up. And I think this went to court. Did it go as far as CAS? I can't recall. And Leeds United, unfortunately, from their point of view, lost. And they had to go and pay both the transfer fee and substantial wages because the player's ongoing career, he never actually played for Leeds in the Premier League because he went back to France, but he put in for loss of wages, and it's a very sore point at Ellen Road.
Right. Amelia Armstrong, Kieran, has our next question, and it's a club-specific question about the relevance of matchday income. And Amelia says, I'm a Fulham fan, and we've had to endure several ticket price rises in the last couple of years. Our owners keep telling us they have no choice but to raise the ticketing prices as high as £160 for Man United at home to keep the club financially sustainable. However, I'm having a hard time believing that raising ticket prices has a huge impact on the club's revenue. Combining the broadcasting revenue from staying in the same league for more than one season and player sales, we should be in a good enough financial state to not need to charge fans this much money. So I'm wondering, is increasing ticket prices and having to deal with angry fans is worth it financially, or are the owners doing it just because they can? I suspect, Kieran, that again, Amelia's almost answered her own question as well as Hannah did.
Yes, we've not used the phrase tin ear in respect of clubs and club owners for quite a few episodes on the show, and I'm delighted to return to it. If we take a look at the finances of Fulham Football Club, or Cougar Holdings is the parent company of that, and the owner Shahid Khan, he at one time he was thinking about trying to move Fulham to Wembley, from what I recall. Fulham generate £1 in every 12 from ticket sales. So increasing prices by 10% actually has relatively little impact upon the club's overall income, and secondly, in terms of income on a broader scale. So they make £15 million a year from ticket sales. If you increase that by 10%, that becomes £16.5 million. If you increase that by 20%, that would become £18 million. Now, to put that in context, if Fulham finish 9th instead of 10th in the Premier League, they get an extra £3.5 million. So we are talking seven-figure sums. The club will say, well, we'll hold on. We are losing money, and they are. Fulham makes substantial losses in both in the Championship and in the Premier League, and we need to therefore recoup those losses, A, for PSR purposes, and B, because the owner's now reached the stage where he's not happy, effectively dipping his hand into his pocket to the extent that he has done before. So that's the argument that will be put forward by the club, which I understand through a financial lens, but it does seem that fans are being targeted. And again, you don't want to come down sort of the xenophobic route of it's American owners who want to Disneyfy, who want to Americanise ticket sales, but there's clearly a much broader issue in respect of the prices which are being charged for tickets. Fulham know that if they've got a home match against Manchester United or Chelsea or City or Liverpool, whoever it's going to be, they can charge £150 a ticket, they can charge £300 a ticket, and they will sell a significant amount of those tickets. So what they're trying to do is to squeeze out the season ticket holder in terms of making more tickets available for the casual stroke tourist stroke day tripper fan, whoever you want to describe them. And I'm not being critical of those fans. They will also point out that Fulham's in London. London gets loads of people coming to the city who want to go and watch a game of football, and why not sell to the highest bidder? Because in the United States, that is seen as the right route. Yeah, the United States, when it comes to ticket prices, take a very capitalist approach and reap the financial rewards as a result of it. It's completely inconsistent with where we stand as football fans, as legacy fans, that football is part of our identity. If you're a Fulham fan, then you've been going to Craven Cottage since you were so high, and you will stop going to Craven Cottage on following your last breath. And there's something wonderful about that, regardless of whether the team win, lose, or draw. Owners don't see it like that, and they think that, for want of a better phrase, Fulham fans who are season ticket holders are bed blockers, and they want to get them out of the system. And as we are seeing that from other owners as well, and the owners will say, look, the TV money stopped rising. It's getting increasingly difficult to squeeze more money out of sponsors. And they go, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say you don't want gambling sponsors and then expect us to get get lower deals. And they are using PSR as a Trojan horse to justify the price rises for individual tickets and also season tickets.
So I've got a couple of things off the back of that, Kieran. 3 things, in fact. I'm trying to retain my composure here, Kieran. I'm actually quite angry about the issues that Amelia has raised. And it would be very easy to look at Fulham. I said earlier that Wayne sounds like a Liverpool name. It would be very easy to say, well, Amelia sounds like a Fulham name, doesn't it? Sounds like a nice middle-class Fulham fan. But Fulham has a very traditional working-class fan base. It's always a club that I love to visit. It's a club that has great awareness of its history, and it's a working class history. It's the Hammersmith end and the Putney, and and you walk through, yes, a beautiful park to get there, but it's always been the traditional working class club. So to charge, people like Richard Osman and Hugh Grant are Fulham fans, but they'll argue they're from working class backgrounds. They can afford 160 quid for a Man United ticket. Most Fulham fans can't. I do wonder as well, Kieran, whether the cost of the new stand comes into this. I don't know how much it costs, but it's rather wonderful. But again, a little bit like our comments about Everton, I kind of preferred it when Fulham was a proper rickety old ground where you could actually see the river. You can't see the river now unless you pay for a season ticket in the new stand. And thirdly, we saw on Saturday the Football Supporters Association campaign, Stop Exploiting Loyalty, Stop Exploiting. But it seems to me, Kieran, what clubs are doing increasingly is they're exploiting the disloyal. They're exploiting the one-off fan by charging them a fortune to come to a game once a season. They're exploiting season ticket holders in a completely different way. It's not the loyalty of the season ticket holder they're exploiting. They're trying to stop the loyalty of the season ticket holder. They're trying to get season ticket holders out, as you say. And I think this is a subject, and I apologise because I'm a bit all over the place on this, but it does anger me. I think in the last 6 months, this is a subject which is beginning to percolate and come to a head. I think football fans won't vote with their feet because that's exactly what the clubs want them to do. But something's got to give, and from my point of view, it's got to be the attitude of the owners that has to change, Kieran. It's because it's taken us in a direction that I really hate, and Amelia's right to highlight this.
Yes, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. Owners, and this is a classic case of be careful what you wish for. We highlighted the issues in terms of the car parking prices for Manchester United fans, for disabled fans, going up, and it's now £17-18 a match. And I said, I think we were both disappointed in the club, given that the club has done some magnificent things during COVID, and also the commitment to the real living wage in Manchester. And I'll be honest, it's a terrible thing to say, because granted, the other way around, it was actually down to the Glazers signing up for that, because offshore Jim wouldn't do. And I've been fairly, I've nailed my colours to that particular mast fairly unequivocally, and it was interesting to see that a proportion of the Manchester United fan base, I'm not saying it's everybody, saying you've got to realise it's not a charity, it's a business. And I say, okay, fair enough. But when they come after, once they've decided they're going to cut costs by kicking out Sir Alex Ferguson in terms of his role, once they've targeted the disabled fans, once they've targeted the some of the fees that they're charging to the hospitality people, and I know somebody that has hospitality at Manchester United. It's gone up from £3,600 to £6,000 in the course of 2 seasons. Then they're coming after you, folks. They'll be coming after you for your season tickets. They'll be coming after you for your match ticket. And if you then say, well, this is absolute disgrace. Well, if you weren't there for these other people, then they ain't going to be there for you. And it is a cause for concern. Why is football having to increase ticket prices? It's said earlier, the money from TV is flatlining. It's still very good. And the clubs will point out that if they don't sign players for X million or X 100 million over the course of the summer, they get accused of lacking ambition. They're now effectively saying to fans, A, we expect you to pay more, and B, they are using PSR as a convenient excuse. Oh, we don't want to put up prices, but we're forced to because of PSR. PSR has become sort of the rationale for decision making, because owners don't want to have an honest debate and discussion in respect of this. We'll have a chat. We're on very good terms with the Football Supporters Association. So we'll have a chat with regards to this policy. There was a banner, between at Brighton for Brighton versus Wolverhampton Wanderers on Saturday. I know people from Liverpool and Everton. They've joined up with other clubs, and one of the great things is that, yes, we've got hostilities as fans of our individual clubs, but the fact that Tottenham and West Ham fans are now in dialogue with one another because they realise that what brings them together is more important than what holds them apart. You're a Tottenham fan because you're a Spurs fan, you're a West Ham fan because you're Spurs fan, but actually you've got far more in common, because if you're the seniors of either of those fans, you are being treated in a fairly substandard manner.
Yeah, maybe this is a subject for a special pod, Kieran. Who knows, a one-off before Christmas. We'll get a few of the interested parties together, by which I mean people who agree with me. Our penultimate question comes from Durgesh Kulkarni, and I think this might be on our list of questions that are no longer topical, but it's still a very good question to ask anyway. Because Durgesh says, my question is about disclosing transfer fees. Are there any particular rules or incentives when both clubs involved in the transfer disclose the transfer fee? If not, why does the selling club want to make the amount they are receiving public? Because then the new player they want, surely his club will want more money. For example, let's assume West Ham agree to sell Paquetá to Man City for £80 million, and they are targeting player X from Club Y to replace him. Disclosing the £80 million figure would surely enable Club Y to play hardball and ask for more money for player X, and that's going to be a problem for West Ham.
Yes, and that is the reason, Durgesh, as to why so many clubs these days are going down the undisclosed route. Um, the rationale for disclosing a fee, we were talking earlier about um, is it worth the owners the extra hassle that they will get from fans from increasing fees? Well, one of the things which some fans give some owners grief about is the transfer spend. So by getting it into the public domain, especially if you are spending a lot of money, then the benefit is you can say, look, I spent £40 million on that player and £60 million on that player. The fact that it's not worked out for the player for whatever reason is a separate issue, but there's the money and that's how much has been spent. So the clubs will often do that because they want to be able to communicate to the fan base, we are spending money, and therefore will you now please go and spend £85 on our new third choice shirt as your contribution towards that. But I absolutely agree in terms of keeping cards close to chest. In terms of subsequent negotiations, if you just sold a player for a large fee, then there are benefits. A lot of the time, however, it won't be the clubs who announce the fee. It will be leaked by an agent or leaked by a party close to the player because they want to be able to say that their client, yeah, if I'm an agent and I'm trying to pick up other players, yeah, if I can leak out, well, yeah, I've been representing my client now for 3 years. He started off as a £5 million player from Paraguay, and he's just gone for £30 million in the Premier League. Then that acts as an incentive in order to attract new talent to the roster of players for the agency itself.
Our last question, Kieran, comes from Joe Weinstein. And because you've been a good boy, Kieran, producer guy and I got together and we said, let's find a question that Kieran will love. Let's find Kieran a good old-fashioned accounting question, because Easter egg and Christmas and birthday all at once. And Joe's question is this: while reading your Price of Football book, I came across Manchester United's decision to reverse the impairment of a player who was reintroduced to the squad in the 2016-17 season. Why would Manchester United's accountants decide to do this instead of leaving it alone? Would this decision please their auditors? Is there some sort of law that requires them to do this? Or did they do this only for the purpose of increasing their intangible assets? I think we should probably clarify, Kieran, when Joe Weinstein says reading your Price of Football book, he means you in the singular. Because in the Price of Football book that we wrote together, I don't remember typing the sentence that included the words reverse the impairment of a player. But it's a good question, Kieran. I'm going to put the kettle on. Give me a shout when you're finished, and we'll draw a line under the whole pod.
This I have looked at every single set of accounts of every club that has been in the Premier League since the competition started in 1992. And on only one occasion has there been a reversal of an impairment. Now, for people not familiar with what an impairment is when you sign a player, let's say that you sign a player for £100 million on a 5-year deal, such as Chelsea signing Romelu Lukaku. And it could be at the end of year one, you say, right, well, we're going to amortise the contract over 5 years. So 100 divided by 5 means we're going to charge 20 million amortisation each year. 100, take away the 20, you've got a player value in the books of 80 million. If you think you can you cannot get that player in the market, you couldn't sell that player in the market for that fee, then we have to introduce what we would call an impairment. An impairment is normally where the value of an asset is worth less than its value in the accounts. And under the accounting rules, you've got to write the player down to his market value. So it doesn't happen very often. In the case of Manchester United, they publish accounts 4 times a year. And in, when was it, 2016, when Mourinho first became the coach of Manchester United, an obnoxious man is Jose Mourinho, by the way. I have many a tale I could tell, but I won't. Obnoxious man.
He comes across as such a sweetie.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah. No. Always judge by people by how they treat others who are not in as senior position as yourself. I'll say no more than
Lionel
that.
Blair. Yeah, carry on.
Yes. So what he did, as part of him trying to make his impression on the squad, and also to pick up a bit of press and media attention for himself, he demoted. I think it was Bastian Schweinsteiger, who formerly of Real Madrid, been signed by Manchester United, and he was made to go and train with the academy players, which is for a player, a senior player of the gravitas of Schweinsteiger,
great player.
Was a very, very insulting thing to do. So why was Mourinho doing it? What he was trying to do. Van Gaal had been the previous manager, so he was saying, the players that Van Gaal had signed were rubbish. I'm going to turn this around. So as a result of that, what Manchester United had to do, under pressure from the auditors, was to say, well, look, if he's only playing with the youth team, he can't be worth very much, so we have to write the value of his down. Then, egg on face, Manchester United have an injury crisis, and Mourinho has to bring Schweinsteiger back into the first team squad. Once he's back in the first team squad, his market value returns, and that's why we had the reversal of this initial write down. So it's only occurred once, and it's only occurred because Manchester United under US reporting rules, they have to show accounts 4 times a year. So that's why it's I do make reference to it in the book, Joe, simply because to show this is theoretically how it would happen on a more regular basis. But I can assure you, I've been through every set of accounts, and it's only ever occurred once in the history of football.
You've answered the question I was going to ask, Kieran. So it's only American-owned clubs or clubs that are floated on the New York Stock Exchange that have to publish accounts 4 times a year?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's part of the price you pay for being what we refer to as a listed company. We've still got clubs who are controlled by American owners, but their accounts are published in the UK. If you are having shares traded, so I can go out and buy Manchester United shares today. I couldn't buy a share in Crystal Palace or Brighton or Bournemouth because those are private companies. So if you are a public company, your shares are traded, and part of the price that you pay for being a public company, if you're listed on the New York Stock Exchange, is that you've got to give information on a more regular basis.
Yeah, it's probably for the best that you can't buy shares in Crystal Palace, Kieran. There's too much opportunity for mischief there. I don't like the idea of you having a Palace share in your toilet. I don't know what you'd use it for. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod and get access to our chat community and our regular quizzes, you can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. But you may like to hold your horses, because we will have on Thursday's Newspod a very big announcement for you. We've been hinting at it for a while, but we have come up with a range of things to offer to our subscribers, to our Patreon people, for I think still is a laughably small monthly contribution, and there'll be an annual discount. So we'll tell you all that on Thursday, but I think it's an actually quite exciting discussion we're going to have off the back of that. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter X and find us on our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to buy our book, which is now out in paperback, Unfit and Improper Persons, you can find details on our website, priceoffootball.com. As I said, we'll be back on Thursday with our regular news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always, everybody. Thank you for those people that were concerned about my welfare after the 95th minute equaliser by Wolves, when Brighton, for reasons best known to themselves, were operating a 2-1-7 formation against one defender. I do appreciate it. There's a variety of ways that you can support the show. Patreon, or as I say, Kevin is hinting at the news. We are going to change things around. Is one vehicle. Another way is just to give us a review. And thank you very much for the very kind words that you say on such a regular basis. Doesn't matter what you say in the review. You can even say you would rather have the show presented by Joe Pasquale and Miriam Margolis. And I think that could be one of the sweariest shows and bizarre of all time. So we'd look forward to that. I'd pay for that, I'll be honest with you. And just a reminder that this show is going out on the 29th of October. So we're moving to November, and which is, of course, often known as Movember, in respect of mental health issues, especially amongst men. And we of course have many women listeners as well, as evidenced by the questions today. And as part of our sort of a small token of how can we help out, we are doing a show in Brighton on Friday, the 15th of November, and all of the proceeds are going to Brighton Samaritans. They do an absolutely amazing job. The reason why we've chosen Samaritans is my friend Dean, who I've been playing football with and going to matches with for 40 years. He now works for Samaritans, and the stories that he tells me, which of course have to remain private, are humbling, are tragic in many occasions, but what Samaritans do is absolutely amazing. So tickets are on sale if you go to the link for the show notes. All the money is going to Samaritans, and I'm also auctioning the Paul McShane shirt from the victory at Selhurst Park in October 2005. I hope to get it. It's worth a lot. It was a one-off shirt we used on the occasion, and he scored the winning goal. And he went, of course, to play for Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I grew a cracking moustache a couple of years back for Movember, and there was nothing Ali could do because it was for charity. Although the following year, she donated a large amount of charity to stop me growing a moustache. I thought I looked really handsome. My mum used to prevent my mum. It used to, God rest her, she hated me growing a moustache. Well, I think I look quite good in it. And also, for our new subscribers, I'm going to add, when we reveal the details on Thursday, I'm going to do my best to make that Joe Pasquale, Miriam Margolis one happen.
Oh, wow.
Because that would, I know one of them will definitely do it. I could get him tomorrow.
Right.
It might take some explaining to Miriam, but Joe is one of the nicest people you could ever meet.
Oh, fantastic.
Joe Pasquale. Except you do have to say to him when you're in the pub, stop doing the voice now, Joe. Just, can we have the offstage voice now? Because otherwise it's really fucking annoying. But he's a top man, Joe. He's lovely. That would be a cracker. I'm not sure how long that pod would last, Kieran, but it would be the sweariest. You're absolutely right. Bye, everybody.
Yes. Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.